Thank you very much. Thank you. Welcome. I'm Father Mitch, Pacwa, and welcome to Thresehold of Hope, a program where we bring you the writings of the church. And we'll be getting to our document, Faith and Reason, in just a minute. But I want to mention that today is the feast of Saint Cristóbal Magallanes Jara, or sometimes called Christopher in English, but Cristóbal is on Spanish. Born in 1869, became a priest, and was martyred in 1927. And the reason he was martyred is that the government of Mexico was trying to eradicate the Catholic Church and its influence throughout Mexico, a very Catholic country. It was a very Masonic government, the very heavy influence of the Masonic Lodge in the Mexican government. So there was an anti-Catholicism there, but also a push for very large government. And Father Cristóbal Magallanes wrote and preached against doing armed rebellion. He was not in favor of using violence to stop this. But the Mexican government didn't care what he actually said. They just killed him, and there was no trial. As a matter of fact, he was about to go say Mass when the Mexican Federales caught him and shot him, vested as priest. As a matter of fact, EWTN's religious catalog has a wonderful movie about this so-called Cristero War. It's called For Greater Glory. And one of the people who gets martyred there is Father Magallanes. You see his execution portrayed in the movie. Peter O'Toole played him in that. And it's a wonderful movie to get an idea of that. And it's becoming more important for us to understand what happened in the Cristero War. That kind of government oppression of people for their faith was something that people said, you know, they're just not going to sit down about. As a matter of fact, back in 2005, Cardinal Jorge Bergoglio, who is now Pope Francis, said to his people in Argentina, where they were also getting government attempts to stop the right to life movement and the right to and marriage as between a man and a woman, and a variety of other basic doctrines. And then Cardinal Bergoglio said in Argentina, defend the unborn against abortion, even if they persecute you, calumniate you, set traps for you, take you to court, or kill you. No child should be deprived of the right to be born, the right to be fed, or the right to go to school. So this is something that is very lively for him, because lots of governments through the 20th and now into the 21st century are more committed to their ideologies and their way of fixing what they consider society's problems than they are to people's most fundamental right to freedom of religion. And we Americans are not exempt right now from that. If you remember, back in 2009, Secretary of Homeland Defense Napolitano included pro-life groups on a list that Homeland Security had to watch out for. And then just a few months ago, in a training session for the National Guard of Pennsylvania, one of the slides presented to the National Guard soldiers was to be careful of Catholic groups. What? Excuse me? And how does that fit into our Constitution? And later on, they backed us. Oh, well, sorry, we didn't mean for you to catch us, is what I think is at stake. And then we've been seeing, that this scandal going on about both the Department of Justice going after certain reporters that we know of so far. Who else are they going after must be the question. And the IRS going after religious groups and conservative political groups. This is not right. And if there was a conservative government who went after liberal groups, we would have to stop that too. But this has been going on since, ever since, there's a log in the White House that just was made known that the person in charge of the union for the IRS employees had met with the President Obama. And within 2 weeks, some of this started going on. This goes back to the 2010 midterm election, that they started going after the conservative groups on politics. But religious groups, for instance, one group, this is from the Washington Examiner, the Coalition for Life of Iowa, tried to get a permit, not-for-profit status for their group. And someone calling herself Ms. Richards told the group that under perjury of the law, they would not picket, protest, or organize groups to picket or protest outside of Planned Parenthood. Since when does tax-exempt status take away your right to freedom of speech and assembly? That is also in the Constitution. I mean, the First Amendment is under serious threat on the basis of political ideology and religion. And other groups, I'm hearing in other programs on the radio and elsewhere, that other religious groups are being required to submit what prayers will you say in your group. That is not the business of the IRS, and especially now that the government is hiring another, 7,000 IRS employees to enforce the health care laws, which, by the way, in terms of freedom of religion, Muslims are exempted, as are the Scientologists, because it's against their religion to have insurance, and I respect that. If that's their tenet, that's fine. But they get exempted. But we are not being exempted from committing mortal sins of paying for abortion-causing pills, birth control, and sterilization. So this is something that we must make sure that, like Father and now Saint Cristobal Magallanes and all the other martyrs who died for their faith against an oppressive government trying to limit their religious freedom, we too must stand up for our Constitution and not let this federal administration get away with any such nonsense. This is unacceptable, and we must be vigilant. That's the nature of a democracy. The citizens must be vigilant to make sure that the government is protecting our rights. Now, we are dealing, and you can see that some of this has to do with issues that we're talking about, the faith and reason. And that's the document that we are dealing with now. Now, you can get a paperback copy of this document, Fides et Ratio. I'm writing to Daughters of St. Paul, and their website is www.pauline.org. And they have an online store, and you can just type in Fides et Ratio in the search page. Also, you can download a free electronic copy of Fides et Ratio in the EWTN document library at EWTN.com. You can download it free into your computer, an electronic form. You can just type in Fides et Ratio, or go to where it says encyclicals, click that on, and then you can download it from there as well. Now, of course, while you're at EWTN.com, you can watch Threshold of Hope, simply clicking on EWTN live shows, and then click on Threshold of Hope, and you'll see past programs. Now, we want you to be involved and participate in our show. You can do like these nice folks have done, and that is come here to Birmingham and be in our studio audience. Or you can send us a question by writing to Threshold at EWTN.com, or call us during the live broadcast, which is on Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. And the phone number is 1-800-221-9460. Or outside the United States or here in Birmingham, it's 205-271-2980. All right, we are now in Fides et Ratio. We're on paragraph 3. And one of the things that the Pope begins with is that human beings have a lot of resources available to them in order to generate greater knowledge of the truth. There are many ways to learn about the truth, and that's a good thing. One of these tools is philosophy. Now, the Greek word philosophy, philosophia, comes from two Greek words. Sophia is wisdom, and phileo is to love. So, and philia is the noun form. So, philosophy means the love of wisdom. Now, notice it's the word wisdom, not knowledge, because knowledge sometimes is a good word to use for the accumulation of facts and data. And that's good. But then trying to make sense out of those facts that we do know, that's wisdom. And that takes another kind of reflection. So that's one of the things that we have. Now, philosophy is something that comes when human beings ask questions about why. Now, any of you who've raised 3-year-olds hear the question, why, Mommy? Why is the sky blue? And that's often a very interesting process, isn't it? I mean, they spend when they're 2 years old saying no to everything. Then when they're 3, they start to ask why. And that's a perfectly good thing for little kids to do. And it also challenges a lot of parents to give them explanations that their 3-year-old minds can understand and prepare them for bigger questions. It's not as if you tell them an answer and then that's it. Well, sometimes that's it. Because I said so, it ends a lot of discussions. But, still, they're going to keep asking why. And that's, again, a good thing. It can drive you a little crazy. I know a lot of parents say, oh, these questions. But it makes you learn more in a way that you put into words. So that's a good thing. And people have, and that shows that even as little children, we have a craving to understand. We do want to know why. And they're not just being obnoxious. Sometimes they are, but really they're just oftentimes trying to know how things work in life and why they are. And philosophy is when you take that basic drive to understand to different forms and modes of learning. So that desire to understand becomes more sophisticated. So generally, philosophy as such is done a little bit later in life so that you have more experience to work with. But it is innate to human reason to be able to ask such questions. The animals, again, you've heard me say before, and I'll probably be talking about my cats a lot. As much as I think they're cool, and they have a lot of savvy about what's going on in the neighborhood. They know a lot of the things going on that I don't know, but they don't ask why. Why do birds build a nest too high for me to reach? They don't ask that. They just look up. So this is something that is part of human nature, to ask why, to understand. And sometimes, the various answers that do gradually emerge, a lot of times it takes a while. Think of how long it took for people to understand that the world is round. Many of the ancient peoples through the Bronze Age still thought that it was flat. It was the Greeks during the Iron Age who, you know how they figured it out that it was round? During lunar eclipses. They could see the shadow of the earth going across the face of the moon. And as they saw this, said, they even figured out how large the earth is based on the curves they saw of the earth over against the curve of the face of the moon. And that's extraordinarily clever. But they didn't figure out, the cavemen didn't figure that out the first time that they came across it. And even many Bronze Age cultures, still thought the earth was flat, including Egypt. So these come, emerge gradually. And the different cultures complement each other. They help each other learn. There were a lot of mathematics issues that the Babylonians worked out well before the Greeks. Even though the Babylonians thought the world was round, some of the mathematics they did helped the Greeks, after the Greeks conquered them, to learn more about the sun, moon, and stars. And also after they conquered the Egyptians, they learned a lot from them. So there's a lot of going back and forth in cultures, as is still the case today. So philosophy has a powerful influence on the development of the cultures of the West. It's very important to understand Plato and Aristotle and Socrates and the pre-Socratic. Again, one of my favorite books for beginning to understand the importance of philosophy in our cultures is called The Last Superstition. The Last Superstition. It's by Dr. Edward Feser, F-E-S-E-R. It's brilliant. For one thing, he just takes the atheists apart through reason. Through reason and philosophy. But he also shows brilliantly the importance of the philosophers who came before Plato and before Socrates. That's what they're called, pre-Socratics. And that is something that's very important. But also in the Orient, whether it be as far east as China and and Japan and other parts of Asia and India, or in the Middle East or in Egypt, various philosophical questions were being dealt with. And in fact, you see throughout the Middle East and the Far East that there are many issues of philosophy, usually in the form of various wisdom books and proverbs. They liked short proverbs more. But there's wisdom there too about a lot of things. Every nation has its own native and seminal wisdom, in that it's a real cultural treasure, and you can learn a lot. I mean, I've been starting to collect various Arabic proverbs from my friends, and they're very clever. My friend's grandmother, God rest her, was full. I mean, every time something came up, she'd have a great proverb for the situation. And I didn't learn this one from her, but from another friend of mine. We're talking al-majnun birmi hajar fi bir wa mi ba'aql mabtal osh, which means a crazy guy throws a rock into a well, but 100 people who are intelligent don't know how to get it back out. very wise proverb that explains most of what goes on in the world's wars and other political situations. So at any rate, this is something that you use, and more philosophical reflection comes as people think, well, why is it that crazy people are throwing rocks into wells and smart people don't know how to get it out? And you try to go from small proverbs and sayings to develop greater philosophy. That's one of the things that we do. And that this basic form of philosophical knowledge is seen in the various ideas or the postulates, that is, theories, which inspire national and international legal systems. One of the things about our legal system is very different from, say, Roman law. In Roman law, the philosophy principle was you're guilty till proven innocent. Therefore, you could torture people under Roman law to make sure they were innocent. And with us, a totally different perspective. You are innocent until proven guilty. And you may not use cruel and unusual punishment or torture. So the totally different perspective on the philosophy of law. And again, in fact, the theory of our government was in many ways developed by St. Robert Bellarmine. A lot of people don't realize Thomas Jefferson was reading a book by St. Robert Bellarmine that gave principles for the kinds of checks and balances that we have. As one source among many. And this is important to understand that. There was, of course, Rousseau with the social contract and many other influences. Nonetheless, it is true that a single term has a lot of different meanings. This is always true in life. A lot of different nuances. And therefore, you have to clarify the different meanings of things. And this is part of human life. So when I say a crazy man throws a rock into the well, what do you mean by crazy? Okay. What, and where does that, and then you can take the word apart, and the word that they use in Arabic for crazy, majnun, comes from the root janan, and from that same root comes jinns, or genies, like genies in a bottle, from the same root, so that there's also a sense that you're possessed by a jinn. So there are all sorts of nuances that you can then start to pursue and understand. And so we are driven by a desire to discover the ultimate truth of existence. Why are we here? That's the ultimate. Why do we exist? There's no absolute necessity that any one of us, or even the whole universe, should exist, but it does. Why? Now I sound like a 3-year-old, but why? And that's something that is a key issue here. And human beings want to understand those, what the Pope calls universal elements of knowledge that help people understand themselves and come to their own self-realization. And by realization, it means fulfilling yourself. What really makes you fulfill yourself? And people have all sorts of things. As a matter of fact, the advertising industry is full of everything from "you deserve a break today" for a hamburger or whatever, to various lotions and other products that'll make you look 1,000,000 years younger. And so, this is, what really does fulfill you and bring you to your full realization. Now, these fundamental elements of knowledge, where do you get them from? First, that sense of wonder. That again, like a child. See, if you hear from a 3-year-old or other kids all day long, why? It can drive you a little crazy. But on the other hand, the fact that they are filled with wonder is a good thing because they're asking questions. A kid who is laid back, doesn't care, and says, whatever, I have little use for in my classroom. That kid thinks he or she already knows it all. And what do they even want to learn? And it's not only kids like that. There are plenty of adults who say like, whatever, instead of, wow, what is it? Big difference between what is it and whatever. Why is it? That sense of amazement and wonder that especially comes from looking at creation. This is one of the things I love about the scientists I know. They have a sense of amazement at how cool the universe is. And we live in such a blessed time, and of course, perhaps 1,000 years from now, we'll be considered very backwards. But think of how the different telescopes have seen galaxies. Why do they shape like that? What are those clouds? Why are there so many billions of stars in each galaxy? And why are there so many billions of galaxies? And what's going on with that? This is something that comes with contemplating creation. And human beings are astonished to find themselves as part of the world. Again, why am I here? I'm so small. When I'm in an airplane, I can't see people. I can barely see semi-trucks going down the interstate, yet alone people. And from the, if you were on another galaxy, you couldn't see our planet, could probably barely see our galaxy itself. But we also share a common destiny of living in this world together. This is the beginning of the journey that leads us to discover the new frontiers of knowledge. This is why people who wonder and are amazed want to learn more. If you don't have wonder, men and women would lapse into a deadening routine and little by little become incapable of a life which is generally personal. But if you do have wonder, then you go into this world with an enthusiasm for it. And of course, some of us will have gifts for understanding various aspects of the world. I'm, more adept at understanding languages and history than some people are. But they are more adept at the mechanics of the universe, at the physics, at the beauty, at the distance of the stars, at the tiniest little microorganisms. I mean, they know how to do that. They know how to do the math, all these different areas. And together, we help each other to come to new and better understanding. And that is going to be the beginning of wisdom, to wonder and be amazed at the beauty of the creation we live in. We're going to take a break. We'll be back in just a couple minutes. I want to get some of your questions and your comments, so please stay with us. Thank you very much. And want to, of course, invite you, if you get a chance, to come and join us here in our studio audience. If you can be here in Birmingham, please contact our pilgrimage department. Their number is 205-271-2966. or go to the website www.ewtn.com. And this is something that they'll let you know when programs are that you can be part of the audience, schedule for masses, and also a number of issues, scheduling for tours of the studios, information on how to get up to Hansville, place to stay, eat, and all that stuff. So we'd love to have you come and join us. All right, we're going to start off with a caller. Hello, Velda? Velda, you there?
I sure am.
Hi, where are you from?
I'm from the Rio Grande City of Texas.
Are you? How's the weather out where you are?
We are warm, but we're doing fine right now. We're not in the 3 digits.
Okay, yeah, I was more concerned about the tornadoes.
We don't like the tornadoes or the hurricanes.
No. We got to pray for those folks, especially up in Oklahoma and elsewhere. It's horrible up there. So anyway, what's your question, Velda?
Father, I want to know, or before I go there, I want to acknowledge my wonderful blessing. I want to acknowledge your blessing of the understanding and what you give us in the wisdom of God. You are blessed, and I appreciate that very much.
Well, thank you very much. I'm happy to do what I can.
Well, you do a lot.
Thank you.
Anyway, I wanted to know why the masses are now in Latin, but we cannot participate or understand the language. The priest is speaking the prayers, the hymns. What happened that they changed the language?
No, now when you say the Mass in Latin, where are you talking about that the Masses are in Latin?
Well, usually the priest will say the Mass in Latin. Even in EWTN Masses, the Masses are said in Latin. The priest will speak in Latin, and the songs are Latin. Everything just about is in Latin, and I'm not understanding or being able to respond to that.
Now, let me tell you something, Velda. Here at EWTN, we only have part of the Mass in Latin. If you watch our Mass, the vast majority of it is still in English, right? It's just some parts are in Latin, like from the Our Father until communion. And one of the reasons that we're doing that is, EWTN's Mass is broadcast all around the world. And there are people in other countries who don't know English, but still watch our Mass. I remember, in fact, being in Jerusalem at the home of my friend Bishara, and his elderly mother, who's now passed away, but his mother loved praying the rosary with Mother Angelica, and then watching the Mass, right afterwards. And the thing about that was she didn't know any English, so she could say the rosary in Arabic. Mother would say the first part in English, she would respond in Arabic. And the Mass, she would keep saying more rosaries when it was in English, but as soon as the Latin part came on, she was there with it, because she knew all her Latin prayers. And so she could join us in the Mass in that way. So we're having some parts of the Mass in Latin for the folks who are watching in other countries, and that they can also join in when they don't know English. We do translate the Mass into Spanish for the English parts. I don't think we do that for German yet. I don't know for sure. But we're trying to deal with this wide audience. So one of the things that you can do, if you go online, you can get those prayers, because it's the same thing we say in English, only in Latin. And what you can do, if you have a missal, you can follow right along from the Our Father forward. And it's exactly the same thing as you have in English. As a matter of fact, I think on our website, those Latin prayers are given. And if not, you can just look on the internet and find them there. And then, just have a copy of that with you and pray in English with us while we do that Latin, because we're probably going to keep doing those few parts. We'll do, again, the majority in English, but some of those parts for other people in other countries to pray along with us. And we'll try to get you to be praying along with us too, just using English as we go through the Latin prayers. All right, I had a question. Who has they are. What's your question? First of all, where are you from?
I'm from Birmingham.
Birmingham, we got to hold that up to yourself there, because you're soft-spoken lady like Pearson. Well, what's your question?
My question is, I just want some thoughts from you on, Our Lady was sinless, so she never had to say she was sorry,
right,
like we do, and I just want some thoughts on that from you.
Well,
I mean, maybe her joy, or
maybe I'm what?
maybe her joy, or her.
Certainly, because Our Lady is without sin. Certainly, she, as you say, never had to go to confession. She, as you say, never had to say she's sorry. This was, part of that. And what I would sense is that in the midst of a lot of great difficulties, because when she said yes at the Annunciation to following what God asked of her, then she got into a lot of difficulties. Life was hard. I mean, having to go all the way back down to give birth in Bethlehem, then going to Egypt, coming back home a couple, and being without a place, in Egypt. And then the worst of all, standing at the cross as our Lord died. And in that, to have a sense of peace, that she's still doing God's will, in spite of the fact that many horrible things are happening. And she, doesn't yell and scream. She doesn't say, "Why me?" She just says, she let it be. And, especially one of the things that strikes me so much is how the angel Gabriel had told her that her son is to be named Jesus, and he will sit on the throne of his father David. And the only time she sees him called the King of the Jews is on the cross. And yet, because of her sinlessness and her faith in God, she remains, in that same peace. So I don't know that it'd always be joy. That would not be a joyful circumstance. But she would have that peace. She also wondered, we talk about wonder here, she didn't understand. And that's why Luke says twice, she pondered these things in her heart. These were mysteries to her. But she stayed at peace, even with the mysteries. So those are some initial reflections I would have. We have another caller. Hello, Marilyn.
Yes, good afternoon, Father.
Hi, and where are you from?
I'm from Florida.
Good to have you. And what is your question?
And my question is, are you aware of any movement in the Catholic Church to bring the Anglican Catholic Church in communion with the Catholic Church?
Yes.
I'll hang up and listen to your answer.
Thank you, Marilyn. Yes, so folks understand some of these terms. We're much more accustomed to the Episcopalian Church, which is the main branch of the Church of England as it is here, because of course after the Declaration of Independence and the end of the Revolutionary War, Episcopalian ministers who had taken an oath of allegiance to the king, who was the head of the church. I mean, the King of England was the head of the church, just as Queen Elizabeth II is the head of the church in the Church of England. They had taken an oath of loyalty to the king. And so some of them left and went to Canada and remained Anglicans. And the ones who remained loyal to the King of England or the Queen today, stay Anglicans. And that's what they're called in most of the world, Anglicans. But here, because of our revolution, they gave up loyalty to the king and renamed the church the Episcopalian Church. And that's been the main branch. Now, the Episcopalian Church has been declining considerably. I doubt that there are even 2 million left right now. It might be, but I don't think so anymore. Because they've lost a lot of members. They went from about 6 million in 1960 to about 2.4 million in the 1990s. But then as a number of changes of doctrine, such, not only the ordination of women, but also by many of them, the approval of same-sex marriage and stuff, many groups have split off and are now under Anglican bishops from Africa and India, and they call themselves Anglo-Catholic or Anglican churches. And there are a number of these. There's not one group. There are few groups right now, and they want to maintain, what has been traditional Christian morality on these issues, and traditional Anglican doctrine and liturgy. Now, Pope Benedict has, had done a number of moves toward them, and that includes the approval of having an Anglican ordinariate. They're part of the Roman Rite. They're not a new rite, but they have their own bishop, and they they follow a liturgy that is based on the Anglican liturgy, which is very beautiful. I've celebrated Mass because they're fully Catholic, and I've celebrated Mass with them in San Antonio and elsewhere in Texas, and that these churches are certainly able to come in. So this is called the Anglican usage, Anglican use parishes. And that is a Catholic outreach to say, look, you don't have to keep splitting off, but if you do join us, you do have to accept the headship of the Pope and not Queen Elizabeth II. So, that would be a big difference, and a couple other differences of doctrine, because in the Book of Prayer, the Anglican Book of Prayer, belief in transubstantiation is forbidden, because Thomas Cranmer had ordered that written into their doctrine, and so they had to give that up and accept transubstantiation. So, but the ones who are married remain married. And can be ordained Catholic priests and so on. So there is a lot of outreach, and it's been very fruitful. We'll see where that goes in the future. Okay. I have another question here from our studio audience. Sir, where are you from?
From New Jersey, Father.
Good to have you.
When we read sacred scripture, we see often wisdom portrayed as a person.
Yes.
Even being present at God's side when He was fashioning the world. I'd like to hear what your comments are on wisdom being portrayed as a person.
Again, a good question. Wisdom is portrayed in the Bible as a lady. Now, why as a lady, not just a person, a woman? Why? Well, because in Hebrew and in the other Semitic languages, abstract nouns are feminine in gender. See, they have masculine and feminine gender for all nouns. Sometimes I'm confused as to why some things are masculine and some things are feminine. And then there's even a class of nouns in Hebrew, for instance, that the same word is both masculine and feminine depending on the circumstance. Like the word for sun, S-U-N, shemesh, is sometimes masculine, sometimes feminine. Or the word for spirit, ruach, is sometimes feminine, sometimes masculine. Even in the same passage, like in Psalm 51. It's very odd. But enough Hebrew grammar. It's just important to know that the word for wisdom in Hebrew, chokhmah, is a feminine word. So they personify it. And this is called, I'll use a Greek word, hypostasization, that you give something a personal quality so that you can think about it. Now, here's another advantage. In ancient times, only boys went to school. Girls didn't go. Okay? They learned what they learned from their mothers. But boys mostly from the royal family, would go to schools. Commoners would not. There was no universal education at all. It was especially training for the diplomatic corps, as we would call it today. So you had to learn courtly manners and wisdom, how to deal with kings. That's why you'll see in the book of Proverbs a lot of information. When you stand before the king, do this and so on. Okay. Well, you know, I taught boys in high school, and if you describe wisdom as an abstract concept, you may lose them, or lose even a few more. But if you describe wisdom as a beautiful woman who's inviting you to a party, then you might grasp their imagination just a little bit better. And that's part of what's going on. That's part of it. There is that element. But, you know, you see that in Wisdom 8, where, you know, you see 8:22, the Lord created me, Lady Wisdom, at the beginning of his work, the first of his acts of old. Ages ago I was set up. And when there were no depths, I was brought forth, when no springs abounded with water. For the mountains or the hills I was brought forth. For I made the world or its fields. And when he established the heavens, I was there. That's the line that you're thinking of in 8:27. And the idea here, and also in the book, The Wisdom of Solomon, is that they're trying to keep, by personifying wisdom here, they're saying that wisdom is incorporated into the very structure of creation. God put a wisdom into it. And if there's a wisdom, then people who seek wisdom are able to use their minds in order to understand what that structure and order is. Fools will not. The wise will. And so that's the task of wisdom, learning how to get into the structure of creation. And that's why she's there. This, by the way, is the attitude that makes science possible. The pagans thought that the sun, also Shamash, was a god. How do you study a god? You listen to the myths. But the idea of studying what the sun is in itself requires the Jewish attitude. And the same thing with the rest of the universe. If the stars are gods controlling your destiny, you just try to obey them. But if you understand that the sun, moon, and the stars are God's clockwork, then you can understand how it works. The biblical attitude is what makes science feasible, because it's wisdom that underlies it all, and we are able to discover wisdom. Does that make sense? All right, let's take another question from our studio audience. Ma'am, where are you from?
San Jose, California.
Beautiful area. And your question?
Well, in regard to your first comments about Homeland Security, my son had shown me a few weeks ago on the internet that list.
Yeah, the list of the various groups that were being watched by Homeland Security.
And it included the Catholics, the Orthodox Jews, and others. I found it very frightening. And he also went on to tell me that the government has a right to suppress and oppress these people because they're on a terrorist watch list of sorts. What are we to do with this information?
See, here's one of the things. Legally, your son is incorrect.
Okay, maybe I'm misquoting.
No.
Okay.
No, he might. And well, it could be that some people think they have that right.
Okay.
Or even, as we see with the way the IRS is out of control, some people in the government think they may have that right.
He doesn't think the government has that right.
But under the Constitution, they don't. They must have just cause for calling somebody a terrorist. They have to have just cause to arrest you or to get a warrant to search your house. You need a warrant to do that. Now the government forces that are trying to circumvent that. I remember in New Jersey, because a man posted a photograph of his son with a .22 gun that he had given him. The local government forces, police forces, went in there and got him without a warrant. And the man was told by his wife, they're in here. So he called his lawyer, and the lawyer's on the cell phone as he walks in and demanding a search warrant, and that the man not answer any questions or show them his guns or anything like that, because it was a completely legal gun. It was a .22. And there was nothing wrong with it. It was not an automatic weapon or illegal weapon or anything. And so they backed down. And see, this is where we have to know the Constitution and the laws and our rights so that the government does not take away our rights. That is key. And that includes freedom of religion and freedom of speech and assembly that are guaranteed in the First Amendment. And the Second Amendment, too, and all the other amendments. They're all, if you get away with one, they'll go after the others. We have a minute or so. Sir, where are you from?
I'm from Chicago and Fort Myers Beach, Florida.
And your question?
My question is, Jesus told Sister Faustina that if people go to communion on Divine Mercy Sunday, they will receive a plenary indulgence, which supposedly wipes out all the punishment, temporal punishment due to sin. My question is, are there any other conditions required?
Yes. As a matter of fact, we print those every, it's on our website, every Mercy Sunday. You have to go to confession within 8-10 days, either side of the feast, receive Holy Communion in a state of grace, make a decision not to commit any mortal sins, and not to sin at all, and to the best of your ability, and say a prayer for the Pope and his intentions. Those are the normal conditions for any plenary indulgence. And then something like, going to Mass on Mercy Sunday, or saying some other prayer for mercy on Mercy Sunday if you can't get to Mass, like the homebound. Yeah, that all works too. Okay? So, and we print that every year. It's all there in the public, and you can check on the internet for that too. All right. Well, we have run out of time. May the Lord bless you and keep you and cause his face to shine upon you. May he lead you in all of your ways by his peace and guide you to his wisdom. The Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. And, we just always like to remind you, We can bring you these and all the other programs here at EWTN because of your generosity. We don't have advertisers, but we have you to support us. So please keep us in between your gas bill, electric bill, and cable bill, and we'll pay our bills. Thank you.